Well, welcome back to the Big Life Podcast. My name is Robin Lewis, and I'm super excited to be with you here today. I want to introduce to you my co-host, none other than Mr. World-renowned Neal Oates Jr. Sir, good
How are
to
you
see you.
doing? It's good to be seen, Robin. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing great, man. Doing great. I'm excited to share something a little bit different with our listeners today. So we'll just kind of jump right in. For our listeners, we've just crossed that halfway point, right? That halfway point of the year. And rather than simply giving you another leadership lesson today, which I don't want to make light of those, I hope you're enjoying that. But right up there with that, we're going to invite you today into a conversation that Neal and I are going to have around this halftime. And I want you to think of today as halftime through 2026. Many of you are sports, maybe you're athletes yourself, or you enjoy watching sports. I know millions of people are watching the World Cup right now. And so we're familiar with this idea of halftime. And so we are halfway through the year of 2026 as we record this. And the first half has already been played, right? And guess what? We can't change that score. We can't go back. It's already done. Whatever the score is the score right now. But we can absolutely change how you play the second half. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, Neal. What's your thoughts, sir?
Well, before we go any further, I love halftime, right? Because when I think of halftime, I think of the great teams, the great coaches, the great organizations that didn't have the results they wanted in the first half, right? Maybe who were behind. But I always think about the New England Patriots versus the Atlanta Falcons, who came back and won and scored 28 unanswered points in the second half, Robin.
Yes.
And we always say that the great teams, great coaches make halftime adjustments. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to encourage you all not to just listen. Now that seems odd on a podcast for us to say, don't just listen. We're going to encourage you to participate in this conversation as you were mentioned. But if you're driving, just think about these. But if you're sitting somewhere, if you're at home, if you are listening to us maybe on a break, I'm going to encourage you to grab a notebook, right? Pause the podcast after each question that we pose back and forth and write down your answer. And here's why. Because we know that when we take the time to do the work on the front end, and then we slow down and analyze and evaluate our responses, we will be better for it. And it's our hope that at the end of this episode, at the end of the exercise, you're going to have your own halftime game plan. So even if you're behind, you can then come in and make those adjustments so that you can finish the year strong and come out victorious. So, Robin, we were speaking earlier, and you shared something recently that really stuck with me. If you would you tell everyone about the World Cup story, please, sir?
Yes, sir. Certainly, Neal. I was watching a game. It was not that long ago. In the Netherlands were playing, I believe it was Morocco, but they, as they were playing the game, they didn't look themselves. And they had approached the game where they were playing more of a defensive type game, and they are more of an attacking type team. And I remember several of the commentators, at the halftime, they were 0-0, that they were tied. And I remember as we were getting close to halftime and during the halftime, a lot of several of the commentators were saying, I hope they make the adjustment. So the idea is that they approach this game, Neal, a little bit differently than they have for this World Cup. And it was not working out for them. They just didn't even look themselves on the field. And so they were hoping that they would make this adjustment at halftime. The long story short is, Neal, they came back into the second half with the same approach, the same defensive approach. They weren't looking themselves. They were, even, how it is, they select the better team. They were the team to win that match, that game. And they ended the full time where they were still drawn 0-0, and they went through the extra time and they were still tied. And so they had to kick penalties. And of course, the Netherlands won. I'm sorry, the Netherlands lost on penalties nonetheless. And the point there is that the problem wasn't the talent. They're a talented team. The problem wasn't their desire. Everybody wants to move to the next level in the World Cup. But the problem was that they never made the adjustment that they needed to make. And so that
Robin,
reminded me of what we're talking about today.
and that hit me. And the reason I wanted you to share that with our audience is because life works the same way. So I know our audience members, they may be saying, Neal, Robin, I don't know anything about soccer or football. I don't care about sports, but we do know that you care about life. And we know that you care about the big life. And so as we find ourselves here at halftime, life works the same way as it did for the Netherlands. We have commentators. Maybe they're our family members and friends, Robin. Maybe they are our customers or clients who are saying, they're not themselves. They just haven't shown up. Maybe you're having this conversation with yourself and you know that you just haven't shown up and you're saying, I hope that I make the adjustment. Well, we don't want to rely on, but here's why I bring this up. Sometimes we just keep doing the same thing over and over. We keep doing the same thing in the second half that we did in the first half. And what do, Robin? We hope and we will even pray for different results. And we know what that is called. That's insanity, right? So I really want us to listen as we go forward. And if you are in a position to maybe pause and write some of this stuff down, I know that you'll be better for it, Robin. So thank you for sharing that story because I'm sure that it's going to hit our audience like it did for me.
Right on, sir. And it's so true. Even hearing you say what you said, I know that I do that. I know that I'm that silly guy that, sometimes does the same things and expecting different results. And when hearing somebody say it like you just did, it kind of just kind of hits you. You know what I mean?
Robin, we shared this off air. And for those of you who are just listening and maybe you can't see us, I have on a collared button down shirt today instead of a t shirt like I've been wearing for the past few episodes. And Robin was like, hey, man, what's the occasion? I said, I'm getting back to myself. I'm comfortable when I'm dressed up. I'm comfortable in a button down or even with a tie. And so for the second quarter, Robin, so the first quarter, I started off strong. Second quarter, I started slipping a little bit. And then I had to ask myself as we're preparing for this episode, as I'm looking at life at halftime and saying, do I want to do what I've done in the first half or do I want to be better? And so I said, well, let me get back to myself. I had to ask myself, am I carrying the energy that I'm supposed to, or do I need to make an adjustment? So the long sleeve shirt, the button down comes back. And this is where I'm going to encourage you, Robin, audience. If you all see me, looking slack in a t-shirt, even if it's a polo. Neal, where's the tie? Where are the long sleeves? We know how you want to show up. We sure hope they make the adjustment. So, Robin, thank you for allowing me to share that. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to know we always say it, but Robin and I are working to live out what we're talking about here on the Big Life Podcast.
Right on. And that's, if we could get right to the end of this, what this is about making the adjustment. So we have a few questions we're going to share with you, some things for you to consider. As Neal said, you can think about it now. If you're driving, certainly don't stop. You can think about it now, but we want you to let this just be the start where you can actually sit down and answer these questions. I believe it will serve you well if and when you do, so that you can get to that place where you can make the adjustment. So the first thing that we want you to do is to celebrate before you evaluate. If you're like Neal and I, sometimes we tend to want to go right to the place where we can get better. We want to go right to that thing that we maybe didn't do so good at and that we could have done better at, or we can improve and get better. But where we want you to start is we want you to start with celebrating. So this first question is for you to consider. What did you accomplish? What were your wins for the first half of the year? Where did you make progress? Right. And so, Neal, I'll let you go first, man. Like when you back over this first half of this year, What are you celebrating?
Well, thank you for letting me go first with the tough question, Robin. I would say I'm celebrating the first half of the year, and I know this might sound odd to people, but I'm celebrating that I made it through the first half of the year. And what I mean by that is you talk about how our mentality is, right? To always look for improvement, to always be growing and going and achieving and being better. When I say made it through the first half of the year, I'm celebrating the fact that I did not get so stuck on the goals for all 12 months of where I want to be at the end that I did not enjoy the first six. And so I look at my first 6 months and we did not hit everything we wanted to, but my pace, my rhythm of life, I believe was better than it has been over the past 3 or 4 years, right? Being able to enjoy the weeks, the days, the months, even when the results and things were not there, having a peace of mind. I think that's really what it was. So the amount of peace that I've had over the first 6 months, and this is a hard place for me, Robert, right? To have peace without the results, to have peace without perfection, to have peace without achievement, right? And so for me, I'm celebrating the fact that I have been able to finally experience what I would call real peace as we go through the day to day. So that's what I'm really celebrating, this feeling of peace.
That is amazing. That is worthy of celebration, man. Because the truth is that we are our worth, our peace should not be dependent upon our results, right? And
Now,
so,
hold on. You said it should not be,
right,
but if we aren't careful, it's
yeah,
very easy, Robin, for me to
exactly.
say results equal value, results equal
I'm with
worth.
you. I'm with you 100%. And that's why I said that is worthy of celebration. That is a good win to acknowledge. And maybe our listeners, maybe you relate to that, right? That you've had some peace yourself. And that your peace is not tied to the circumstances or the results or whatever the case might be. For me, and I love that, Neil. A couple of things come to my mind. One, I'm really excited that just happened recently. Actually, and I told you about it that we just launched our first leading peers CEO peer advisory group or board, if you will. And I'm really excited about that. That's an opportunity for me to serve people in that capacity. And I just love being around CEOs and business owners. And so it's just another way for that to happen for me. So that's one of the things that comes to my mind. I think this year I've also picked up a few clients and I'm excited about that. Working directly with a group of people as well as one-on-one coaching and that type of thing. And like it sort of gave me a spring, a skip in my step, because my work going into putting myself out there and trying to have a match, find the people out there who can use my services, and there's a win between me and them, and having that come together, I can celebrate that happening again this year. I want to encourage our listeners by this. Let's see. I've had, in fact, Neal help me this to make this happen. We haven't officially put this out there yet, but we're going to have a special speaker who's going to come and speak, a local speaker who's going to come and speak at our Live to Lead event. Neil knows who it is, and you'll be hearing about it in the very near future. But that's a big win for me, because it's a part of the relationships that we have and the connections that come from that. That is really a very special thing when I look at that. That's a big win for me. In fact, Neil, you and I are going to be visiting a place on August the 6th that I think is also such a huge win, where we're going to be able to tour Banyan Ear. I don't know. There's no reason why we can't mention that. Don Campion, who is the founder and CEO of that organization, just a tremendous organization, has graciously agreed for Neil and his wife and myself and my wife to come and get a tour of their, and Neil has a big smile on his face. You want to share any more about that, sir?
Well, here's so one, I'm excited, and there are a number of reasons why I'm excited, but The reason why it's a huge win for me is because it was at the tip of my tongue. And what I mean is, it came up, this win came as a result of relationship and just conversation, and a relationship that you have with Don, and then the relationship that we have. And you were like, oh, Neal, you know Don, right? And I'm like, you just throwing like Don Cheadle. Like, I don't know who you're talking about, like Don Staley. Like, and the fact that, ladies and gentlemen, that we are closer to wins than we could ever imagine. Have to do is maybe share the ask, get it off the tip of our tongue. And so that's why it's so exciting to me. I'm excited about what has already happened for both of us, simply because of the proximity we have to one another. And we opened our mouths and stated or asked a question, shared a need. We were vulnerable and receptive. And because of that, we've got some major wins under our belt in a relatively short amount of time.
Right on. And so for our listeners, we just wanted to share some of those things with you. It's not about Neil and I, but we want you to think about, write down, consider where you've made progress, what you've accomplished so far, what were your wins. And Neil, you and I relate to this ourselves. I think a lot of our listeners struggle to celebrate.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know. So for I can answer it for myself. I think we're focused on getting better, like we're always looking to see how we can get better. And so sometimes what happens is that we miss stopping and taking the time to celebrate what we have accomplished.
Guilty. Robin, 100% guilty. And then if we aren't careful, here's what happens. And I have no doubt that our audience, that they are seeking to live the big life, that they are accomplished. But and it's wild for me when you ask what was my so what am I celebrating? It's the peace. Because otherwise I will do like you've done. We've talked about this, and like our audience has likely done. We move from one accomplishment to another accomplishment, Robin, to another accomplishment. And then what happens? We just don't pause. And I know you're always saying slow down, pause, but we'll move from win to win to win to win. And we won't pause long enough to thank God or recognize progress. We won't even take time to exhale and say, you know what? We did okay. Things are not nearly as bad as they could be. Or now, ladies and gentlemen, Robin and I are not saying after every victory, go and blow the budget on a party, take a world trip. We're not saying that. We are saying pause long enough to say, we did good. You did good, kid. Keep it up.
Right on. And so there you have it on this one, and we're going to go on to the next. And this is the idea. So we're probably going to start moving through these a little bit quicker now. But what accomplishments are you most proud of in the first half of the year? What momentum do you want to continue? So what's working that you want to continue in that vein, in that avenue? And what has exceeded your expectations, right? So you're thinking about your wins.
Good stuff there. Robin, do I have permission to go to the second question,
Yes,
sir?
sir. Let's do it.
Okay. So now I get to throw this this question to Robin, but it's also for the audience. And here's my question for you, ladies and gentlemen, Robin included. What's one lesson this year has taught you?
Yeah.
What's one lesson this year, this first half of the year, has taught you?
Yeah, it's a very good question, right? And so one is that I have allowed, I don't know I don't know if it's say fear to say the busyness of life, or if I've allowed myself. But the lesson is this, that I have to focus more on a few things, and I'll be very specific. I want to improve in my communicating. A win that I've had, Neil, is that I've been speaking more. And the more that I speak is the better I get, right? But there's some specific talks that I'm working on. There's some areas of communication, some stories that I want to practice and get better at, and so on, that I've allowed the things that I'm doing to get in the way of me honoring the time that I want to put towards that. That coupled with the idea that I've also allowed exercise to not be as consistent as it should be, it made me realize that one of the things that I need to do, one adjustment that I need to make is to rearrange my schedule. And so, like the exercise, the focusing on my stories and working on my speaking and my signature talk and making sure that I'm prioritizing time with my family on a daily basis is where I need to make an adjustment. I have not been as consistent with those areas which are important to me like I want to. So I have drifted and with those things. That's the reality. That's where I found myself, sir. So,
Is it my
sir, how about
is it
you?
my turn to come to the congregation, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So for me, it's much like what you said in terms of priority. But for me, it has this year has come. So I've lost a number of close people to me in the first half of this year, right? And it just the year has taught me to. It's reminded me not to take today for granted. Right. And I know it's odd, probably, Robin, for you to hear this coming from me when I'm Mr. Be active, execute on a daily basis. And so this is where my challenge is like have peace, but then make full use of today. And when I say full use of today, I've had to change my priorities of what each day is for. It is not to try to get everything done nearly as much as it is to love the people that I need to love. And it's no mistake that we just talked about why it's so hard for us to celebrate because we're always looking ahead and forward to the next thing. The first 6 months of 2026 has taught me to slow down, to love the people, and to spend time with people, to spend time with my people, to actually listen to what they're saying. So that's been the biggest lesson for me because one of my real estate mentors, Deborah Bowles Valador, I just adored her. She was close to my family as well, with my wife and things that we went through health wise. She was right there beside us, and she passed earlier this year. And then even one of my very close friends was in a car accident. Thank God he's okay. But then I start thinking, have I given them the time, the energy, the love, the attention that they should have, or that I could or should have given them? And the answer was an overwhelming, not even close. So it's taught me to refocus my energy on the relationships, on the things that really matter, not on the doing, getting, accomplishing, Rob.
Yeah, so good. I appreciate you sharing that. And for our listeners, this part of the pausing and reflecting and asking yourself this question is not about feeling guilty. It's not about coming down on yourself or anything like that. It's about being honest with yourself so that you can make adjustments. That's really what it's about. So it's not about coming down on yourself. So Neil and I are sharing with you transparently and vulnerably, but the idea is that we're not coming down on ourselves. We're acknowledging this is where we want to be. This is who we want to be, and this is what's gotten in the way, and so that we can make an adjustment. So that question to you guys is: what lesson have you learned? What lesson surprised you? What would you do differently if January started all over again? What would you do differently? That's a good way to think about it. And what has this year taught you about yourself?
Yeah.
All right. So, Neil, we'll go to question number three.
Yes, sir.
So, question number three is about what's holding me back. So, we talked about lessons that we learned and maybe areas that maybe we didn't do as well as we thought we could have. So, what is actually holding you back? And so, Neil, I'm going to go to you first with that one. What do you think is holding you back?
For me, I put a lot of time into preparing for this because I wanted to make sure I gave concise answers, but then thought like well thought out answers. And so what I realized was held me back in my first half of the year is the size of my vision without the execution to go behind it. What I mean is, I know some people hear that be like, Neil, were you thinking too small? No. My first 6 months, I thought big, and I believe in thinking big. If you know me, I'm a big thinker. I fall into the visionary category, but I did not have the execution to back the vision, Robin. And so there was a disconnect. I said I wanted this, and you all will see this falls in line with me starting the year strong in the first quarter, then getting away from who I am, even the way I dress and how I'm comfortable in the second quarter. So I had the vision without the execution. And so that what did they say? Vision without execution leads to delusion. So I believe that what held me back was a sense of delusion, and it's not because I didn't have wise counsel. It was just I felt like because I was thinking and dreaming that I was doing, and that was not my reality. Right? I put out good thoughts, but I was held back because I did not execute in the lifetime of the opportunities that I had that were here that maybe have presented themselves. That's why, Robin, when you brought up your live to lead and I could execute, I wanted to execute to help you. That's why when you asked me about participating in and doing something, I said I booked the calendar. Whenever we get done with recording episodes, what do? We schedule our next recording session, right? And that's where now my execution is in line with my vision. So I won't come back and say, well, I'm held back because I didn't execute at the level that I know that I could or should.
Yeah. That's good. That's good stuff. And sir, it's similar for me, like, and I talked a little bit about it already, but where I become my own bottleneck sometimes, like, so for example, I mentioned the calendar, like I have to rearrange my calendar just to give our listeners an example of what I mean. I need to go to my bed earlier. I need to have a really cut off time on that, and then I need to wake up consistently at the same time, get to a place in the morning where I can do my exercise in the morning rather than leaving it for the end of the day. And so I need to rearrange that. And then I need to block time for those, the working on my communication and so on. The things, that I mentioned to you. And in so doing, cut off at a certain time where I can have that time where I'm going to be honoring time with my family and so on, right? Work on my speaking every day and so on. Those types of things are, where I have kind of gotten in the way of myself. And so when I look at it, when I stopped and asked myself these questions, I realized it come down to a priority thing, Neil. And it's about really honoring those priorities, getting clear on what they are. Sometimes I'm busy going, doing, building, and so sometimes I'm doing a lot, but sometimes it's I'm not focusing on the right things. That's the reality, and I have to adjust that. I know what the right things are now, and I have to make that adjustment where I can set it on the calendar properly and honor that.
Robin, I appreciate you unpacking that and being transparent for us. And ladies and gentlemen, you've heard Robin say it is not about guilt, but it is about being grounded and have a foundation in reality to know, because the only way we have or we're able to make great adjustments during halftime is to take an honest look at our first half, right? We have to sit here and we have to tally the score. If the score is 0-0, or if we're down at halftime, Robin, when you agree, it's better for us to be honest than for people to say, you know what, the score is like, if we're down 2-0, you're not going to go into the locker room and say, hey, from here on out, the score is 0-0. We just got to do no. And I can't stand the Patriots. I am a Ravens fan, but Bill Belichick, he would not. Hey, okay, we're just going to go out here and try to win these next two. The score is 0-0. No, he's like, listen, fellas, we are down 20 points. We've got to do something different. We can only get there if we're being honest. If Robin can come in and say, man, I need to get in control of my calendar. I need to wake up. I need to exercise in the morning. I need to stop working late. I need to protect my family, make them a priority. All of that. That's what this really looks like. And so here's what I'm going to encourage us to do, Robin. I want everyone to pause and I want you to answer that question that Robin just posed to me. What's holding you back? And now here's Robin. Would you give me just a little bit of leeway on this?
Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what your answer is, but when you ask the question, what's holding you back? It can't be your kids. It can't be your significant other. It can't be, well, my environment is holding me back, the economy, the energy, like the president. No, what's really holding you back? Get honest. And we really want to take this form of ownership. What are you doing that's holding you back? What can you control that's holding you back? Look internal, because we believe that as long as you look internally, we can control it and we can adjust the outcome. We can impact the outcome. If everything is outside, then we will be lost and we won't have those opportunities. So that's a thank you, Robin. I think we have question number 4. I know I've been talking. Can I keep going, sir?
Yes, sir. Let's go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the one that I'm posing to Robin. I think this is the one that all of us need to ask, but maybe we're hesitant to ask. If you can make one adjustment, we're right here, we're at halftime. We're about to go back onto the field of life, Robin. If you can make one adjustment, what would it be?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that's the idea. One, right? You're not asking me for five, you're not asking me for 10. So you're asking me what one adjustment that I would make that would help me to finish strong for the second half of the year. And I think I've kind of already alluded to it, and that is to rearrange my schedule. I need to rearrange my schedule and then honor that. So I think the adjustment, in addition to rearranging it, would be to have somebody hold me accountable to it. And so perhaps starting out, what I would need, Neil, I'll actually ask you on the air to do this for me. Like you check in with me and say, Robin, have you adjusted that schedule and how are you doing with it? And I think if I can kind of do that right away and then get some rhythm going with that, I'll be okay towards going towards the end. But you know how it is sometimes getting it going and making sure that you're sticking with it initially is the hard part of that. And so that's what I would ask you to hold me accountable to, sir. Rearrange my schedule and in a way that is honoring the priorities that I just mentioned to you.
Done. Check. Roger that. Got it, sir.
How about you, sir? What's one adjustment? I don't know. I know, like we haven't been the best prepared as we come to our listeners today with this, but as you think about it, what adjustment, one adjustment, or maybe you've already given thought to this. What's one
I
adjustment?
I absolutely have. If I could make one adjustment, it would be to ask more, right? So I don't allow, well, I have not allowed people to participate in the goal, the vision, the dream that I want to accomplish. I've tried to make it a one-man show, right? I've always wanted to be the one performing the miracle, not the one that is having the miracle done to or for. And so the adjustment that I am going to make, that I've already committed to making in the second half of 2026, I'm going to ask. And it doesn't just mean that I'm going to ask from a place of need, but I'm going to ask from a place of opportunity, allowing people, giving people the opportunity to be a part of this thing. And the reason that's such a big deal for me is that it means that I have to admit that I need help. I have to allow my ego to die, and so that's going to be the big one for me. It is the adjustment that I'm going to make is that I am going to ask more.
Right on. I love it, sir. And so, for our listeners, we want you to think about, what's something that you should stop? What's something that you should start? What's something that you should continue? Right? So what's something that you should stop? What's something that you should start and what's something that you should continue? In other
And and
words,
and
yes,
then
sir.
Robin, if we have all of that, that leads to what we just talked about. What's one adjustment? So start, stop, continue. Then what's the one adjustment that changes everything? I think that for our listeners of the big life, we can overcomplicate things, but the truth is there might be one adjustment that just changes everything. Robin is saying, calendar. Let me get this calendar worked out so that my priorities are my priorities. That's the one thing for him. For me, it is opening my mouth, asking, allowing people to help. And I love that, Robin.
Right on. Very good. Very good, sir. So let's move on to the next one.
Yes, sir.
This one here, the idea is how are you going to finish strong? Like what's the most important thing that you want to accomplish by December 31st? What's the most important thing that you want to accomplish by December 31st? And
Are
that,
you posing that to me, Robin, or
yes,
are we just
yes,
throwing out
sir.
there?
Yes, sir. You go
Because
right ahead.
I would love to not answer that question. And I would love for us to leave that out there for the audience because that's easy for me. But I am going to say that the one for me, you mentioned it for you, but it's going to be the most important thing is just to regain discipline in the area of physical fitness. And here's why. So I have a specific body fat percentage that I'm working to get to. The weight is going to be dependent upon the body fat percentage, right? But it's going to be to get back in peak physical health, and it has nothing to do with physical health, right? Per se, it has nothing to do with the numbers. It is me doing the thing that seems to be one of my greatest challenges to control the body, right? If a man can control his body or a woman can control their body and do what they said and to beat their body into submission, that probably means I've made the right decisions in relationships, in priority, in business, in my spiritual walk. Because once the man is right, typically the man's world is right. And so for me, I have some health goals, body fat percentage wise, weight wise, and then just being a disciplined individual so that I really can live out. Because once again, it goes back to how we were talking about the way I dress, right? I want to be the person that I say I am in my stories, in my conversations, in my book. And for me, that's going to start with this physical vessel that I have. So it's for me this year to actually achieve, and I'll be sharing those with you personally, Robin, so that you can hold me accountable as well.
Right on. Yeah, and sir, I know there is a lot we can share in this regard. There's a different eras of our lives when it comes to accomplishments, but I think like if I could point to one thing, like one thing that would be a big win for me for the second part of the year is to qualify for a. It's similar to like a TEDx type thing in October where I get to go to Nashville and present. So it means being ready for that and going to that event, and so that's one thing that would be a big win for me because it will represent me doing what doing what I need to do to put me into that position.
I love it,
So
man.
that's one thing that comes to my mind, sir. Sorry, I don't know. Like one thing that we talk about is our word. Does our word change for this second half of the year? Like as you think about it, I believe you had a word for the year. I had a word for the year that sort of gives us direction for our year. Do you make any adjustments to that? Is there a different word that you would use for the second half of the year? How would you respond to that one?
My word doesn't change, but there is an adjustment that needs to be made. And my word has been, is almost every year execute. And so now the adjustment that I have to make is I have to do it, Robin. Right. We talked about the vision without the execution. So now my word is still execute. I guess I would have to say actually execute. Right. So it's one thing to say it, but it's something totally different to actually do it. So for the second half, and over the past couple of weeks, I've been good at actually executing. And so that's the reminder for me. What about you, sir?
Yeah, my word for the year is grace. And I think it is still a place that I need to work on, meaning that I need to get better at receiving it and giving it, right? I shared with you a story not too long ago about something that happened to me that made it obvious to me that I still need to work on that, right? So I believe as far as growth for me is concerned, grace is the word. But if there is a word just for the second half of the year, it would be, honor my priorities. Like really, like, and it's similar to what you're saying. Execute would be a good word too. In other words, it's about making sure to adjust to where I'm not allowing things to get in the way of that. Focused. That's another word I could use, but priorities is what comes to my mind and really sticking to what matters most. And so, to our listeners, now it's for you to pause us, right? And answer that question. Like, What's your biggest commitment for this second half of the year? What's your word? And consider, are you willing to pay the price to make that happen? And so,
Good stuff.
Neil, one thing that happened as I shared this, as I mentioned to you, I was sharing this recently, is that something that jumped out to us is that the main thing about all of this that we're talking about is to just start. There's some things that you're going to recognize that you need to do, listeners. And the key, as we were talking about this, is just getting started. Sometimes it's because we're outside of our comfort zone that we don't start. Sometimes it's fear that we allow to get in the way. Sometimes it's uncertainty or the distractions, or we procrastinate. Whatever the case might be, what came out of that discussion, which is what Neil and I want to share with you, the key to making that adjustment, to making the second half all that it can be, is to just start, right?
Robin, because we know this. We do not want you here on the Big Life podcast to be information junkies. We don't want you to just learn something new. Take the first step. Take the first step. If you need to build momentum in this second half of the year, momentum usually follows action. That first step, that first idea, that first implementation, executing for the first time after you listen to this podcast and you pause and you write things down. Do something with that. Execute your plan, and you'll find that momentum is following that action. So that's my excitement for today as we round out this podcast. Robin, what do you have for us before we get out of here, sir?
Yeah. So, before we leave today, we want you to get a pen. We want you to write this one down. There's a sentence that we're going to give you that
Hold
we
on.
want you to
Wait,
fill it,
wait,
fill it
wait,
in.
wait, Robin.
Yes,
I
sir.
have to say this. Ladies and gentlemen, actually write this sentence and finish it. Don't just think it, right? Because you are like, Robin, you want me to grab a pencil, a pen, paper. I'm telling you all, I'm shaking my finger at you. Write it down. Don't just think it. Now back to our regularly scheduled program, Robin Lewis. Go ahead, sir.
So here it is. It's not a long sentence, so you can catch it. The one adjustment I commit to making in the second half of 2026 is, I'm going to say it again. The one adjustment I commit to making in the second half of 2026 is, so what's that one adjustment that you commit to making during the second half? That's the idea. Neil?
Robin, when they write it down, I need them to do something. Ladies and gentlemen, I need you to do something more powerful than just write it. We saw Robin do it today. I am going to do this with Robin off air. Tell somebody, tell someone what you wrote down, tell someone the commitment that you made. Here's why. And it's not for shame or embarrassment, it's for this beautiful word called accountability. Robin and I believe it. The scholars, the geniuses before us and beside us know that accountability changes everything. So after you write that down, tell someone so they can hold you accountable, because once, what we know is I will do for Robin what I will not do for myself. Me knowing that I have to check in with Robin, oh, I'll get it done for whatever the reason. So accountability does change everything. Robin, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, right on. Well done, listeners. Thank you for being with us here today. I believe that this will serve you. We have a great opportunity. We have taken the time out today to actually work through this with you. We're encouraging you to take time after this. Hopefully, you've done some of it already where you've literally paused us and answered the questions for yourself. If you haven't had the opportunity to do that, then we're encouraging you to take the time to answer these questions. The scoreboard tells you where you are, and reflection tells you why you're there. But adjustment is what's going to determine where you'll finish.
Robin, you say that, and then I know we started with halftime. We're talking about the World Cup. I talked about football a little bit, but you open up by saying we look at the first half. We can't change the score. So I want to remind you all that the first half is history. Okay, the second half is still being written. And the beauty is that you are the one with the pen. You're the one with the pencil. Finish strong. right? It doesn't matter what your first half looked like. Be honest with yourself. Like that's history. You are writing the second half of 2026. So we're going to encourage you to finish strong. Before Robin closes us out, I just want to say thank you all. I want to thank you for allowing Robin and I to speak into your lives, to share some of our personal experiences. I know that we are better for this. It's our belief that you're better for this as well. And do something today to change the second half. Do something today whenever you listen to this to make those necessary adjustments. Go ahead, sir.
Right on. And we believe in you. That's why we do what we do. And so we encourage you, please share. We'd love to hear what comes as a result of you taking time like this. Some of it we might not know until the end of the year, but certainly you'll be able to know what jumps off the page as you take the time to do this reflection and answer these questions. And we believe in you. And, as we're going to close it out, as we always do, thanks for being here with us. And remember that God loves you and we love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And until the next time we see you or you see us, remember, we're right there with you. We're right there with you. Peace.
Take care, family. Bye.